it's interesting to connect it to your question around, how attached are we to outcomes? How do we review our relationship with failure? Because I think it's a very Western thing. And again, I'm not just saying this as a Westerner, although I was born in South Africa, but in our work, we were advised by a lot of specialists on, Zen Buddhism and Eastern philosophy and many different cultures and parts of the world. And I think there is a Western element of perfectionism, the schooling system, where you're valued for answering very well a known question for which there's already an answer, not making mistakes, doing things in a perfect way, etc. And failure and invention go hand in hand, and ultimately you need a lot of failures. Darwin itself, humanity is evolving by its mistakes and by its survival on those mistakes, and that's what creates the resilience. You learn from the mistakes. To your earlier anecdote, or maybe it was last week when we talked about the podcast, if you make mistakes, ultimately you're getting information from that. It's a feedback loop. You're getting information and more perspective. You're learning by virtue of the trial and error. And in a complex world, what's important, coming back to the nature of our world, is that not everything is known. They are unknown unknowns. They are not necessarily answers to everything at a point in time. So there's a discovery process which is emergent, and that's to do with trial and error. So that's why countries like Israel do so well under, of course, putting aside the challenges and political aspects, and that from a technology perspective, an innovation, a creativity, a resilience. It's a country which really thrives on disruption. They understand the value of failure, of making mistakes. The educational system is informal, where they try a bunch of things in a junkyard and test things and hurt themselves. And that is what really brings value. And then you think about the Western world, where you're protected from things, where you just, in Israel, they'll try and find answers to something that they're told is impossible, for which they haven't even been asked the question, and for which there's certainly no answer. In the Western world, you're going to be tapped on the back to answer very well a well-known question with a well-known answer. So that is really the crux of failure. And the very important thing for me, and this is why we have our institute, is that in our complex world, which is indeterminate, you have to fail. You have to emerge. You have to have a discovery process. You have to try things, because there aren't answers for everything. There are complex challenges we don't know how to deal with, societal, energy, climate, etc. And so we could spend hours unpacking it, but there is probably no bigger aspect of appreciating and reframing how we think about failure, from the educational system to governance to everything.